Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Steven Conway. With me, as always, is Jeremy Finestone, which is no small feat because that is one exhausted man you're looking at. He was in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas for Double or Nothing weekend. Back here with us today. He has been burning the candle at both ends, but he's happy to be here with us. I'm happy to be here with you. And just a wild week of wrestling. We have Super Juniors finish up to talk about. We have the semifinals, the finals. We have a preview. Holy moly, a preview of Dominion, a preview of Dominion coming up. We're going to talk about some more of the injuries and a major tag team that is both injured and has some news regarding it and how that affects New Japan. So lots to talk about here, but let's just start with Jeremy. Your busy weekend out in Vegas. AEW Double or Nothing weaves in and out of New Japan wrestling, and especially this time of year. What were your thoughts on what you saw over the weekend?
I felt like I began opening some type of door to a forbidden area starting this weekend. Got a real vibe from that. No, I got in on Saturday morning, and I met up with Garrett Gonzalez and Dave Meltzer, and we watched Night of Champions, and then we watched the final two matches from the Best of the Super Juniors finals, so Dave could grade them for the newsletter. And then did the Sweet Party, the whole deal then. We did the Wicked Spoon the next morning with maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep. Wicked Spoon at the Cosmopolitan is probably one of the greatest brunches I've ever had in my life. Tremendous stuff. Then we went and watched the major beats from the Best of the Super Juniors final. Myself and Mr. Dave and Corey Lieb. And then we went and watched Double or Nothing. And then I flew back home, took care of life stuff with the wife and the dogs and everything yesterday. Put some production stuff together for this show for you and I today. And here we are. This is the last step to an amazing weekend where I got to meet a ton of great people from the Fight Game Media community. Michael Rubio, who is a local neighbor of mine. And you know him with Miguel on the channel here. Got to meet him and his lovely wife, Lisa Gifford, and her partner Jake, Jason Robar, a number of people. Just wanted to shout that out. One of the highlights of the weekend, if it wasn't the wrestling, was the time I got to spend with new friends.
That's awesome. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. And speaking of friends, our friend Brad here is watching with us live. We appreciate that, Brad. Wanted to mention, of course, for those of you who are watching this, we will also have this available, the audio version of this, as a podcast a little bit later, available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. Leave us a review, a little bit of feedback. Give us 5 stars, always helps the show out a lot, gets in those algorithms, and gets us into those searches. So any help is appreciated in that respect. That'll be up a little bit later tonight. So but we're in the meantime, we're live here on YouTube.
Live,
we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to get into that Best of Super Juniors and then lead into Dominion, since that's the way the story progresses as well. Of course, the winner of Super Juniors getting that junior heavyweight title shot. So go ahead.
Doesn't it feel like all bets are off in New Japan right now?
It's a little wild, isn't it? They're going with some new blood and shaking things up a little bit, and it seems to be working. That's something else I'm going to get into regarding the crowds on some of these shows right here. This breath of fresh air seems to be hitting home with New Japan fans. It's in Ghetto we trust, right? Because it just seems like this guy knows his people and knows his audience. Ghetto, of course, being the New Japan booker as well as one of the wrestlers, and he seems to feel like an injection of new faces on top is what's in order. I think he's probably correct. I will admit, I thought El Desperado was going to win this tournament this year.
I did too.
I thought that they were going to make him into, if Hiromu is Liger, they're going to make him Black Tiger. If Hiromu is Tiger Mask, they're going to make him Dynamite Kid, whatever you want to say out there. But it turns out that perhaps the story on this is for later. Desperado can't win the big one. He chokes in the clutch, that type of thing. In the meantime, they decided to go with somebody that we did not necessarily have on our radar going into the tournament. As the tournament went along, we began to see what was developing, and it ended up being pretty exciting. So when last you left us, folks at home right there, we had the A block finals, and the B block finals were coming up. And so went into the final day of block play there at the Osaka Edion Gym in front of 819 fans 4 men vying for 2 spots. You had Yo, who had a really good tournament and really showed a lot of personality he hadn't had before. Master Wato on a long winning streak at this point. El Desperado, who's at this point the veteran, and I had him as my favorite to win the whole tournament at that stage. And then Robbie Eagles, newest member of TMDK, who was getting the new faction push and has always been part of the scene in this tournament. They've always treated him well in this one.
God, that felt like so long ago. Long ago.
Master Wato got a win over Kevin Knight in a really good match. Now, the way this was positioned on the show, this was third from the top, so you knew that Wato was going to win, because if he had lost this one to Kevin Knight, it would finalize too many things and we'd lose a little drama. So we knew that Wato, when the way this one was positioned, that Wato was going to win it. It was a good match, and that put him in contention for those 2 spots. Now, after that, they had to get a little tricky. Yo took on Yoshinobu Kanemaru.
Right.
Kanemaru won, I think, either his first 2. Yeah, he won his first 2, then lost about 5 straight, went on a long losing streak. That wasn't a good sign for Yo, if you know Ghetto's booking, because he likes to throw those little twists in there at the end. Kanemaru ended up working Yo's leg all through the match. He's been doing that figure 4 thing the whole tournament, just working legs, getting in and out of the figure 4 in a million different ways. Very smart worker. In this one, there was an especially good rope break spot where Yo really sold that he was dying, clawing to get to those ropes. There were some really good rope break spots. No one does those better than New Japan. Anywhere. Like the rope break spots, as far as somebody just persevering through a submission hold and barely getting
that was a theme throughout the entire tournament, especially in the near end.
Absolutely. And then they had a very clever finish, I thought. Kanemaru countered the direct drive into a roll-up. At the kick out, he grabs Yo's legs, put them in a figure 4 position. Yo, trying to defend the figure 4, doesn't realize his shoulders are down. Kanemaru ends up really wrenching back on the legs, and even though they're in the figure 4 position, his shoulders are down, and he pinned him that way. So it was a bit of almost like he distracted him with the figure 4 attempt and then got the win.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't. He had him.
It was a really clever one, and I enjoyed that a lot. Yo coming very, very close, but not quite.
And if you guys will remember last week, we split the difference thinking who was going to be the guy to go on. I said Yo, Conway said Wato, and we think we know how that one is going to do. So tip of the cap to you, sir.
Thank you. And then at the end here, we had El Desperado and Robbie Eagles. And the way that this had played out with Yo's finish and Wato's finish, this was everything to play for. Winning your end, basically. And that had a very psychological edge to this battle. There were a lot of head games in this match. And in the meantime, they still worked a fantastic match. Numero Dos was countered into a destroyer by Robbie Eagles. At about the 15-minute mark, he clamped on, Eagles did, the Ron Miller special, which led to another terrific rope break spot as Desperado tried to survive it. Of course, Desperado managed to rally. He hit the Guitarra de Angel for a really good 2 count. And then there was a wonderful scramble where these guys were working in and out of Ron Miller and Numero Dos and slipping some pin attempts in there with escapes and reversals and roll-ups. Just a lot of fun to watch. Desperado ended up getting the Numero Dos on after he hit a reverse dragon screw. So the one where the leg kind of goes out instead of in, which just looks like it has a lot of torque on the knee, so it's a good one to really sell it. And then he clamped on Numero Dos and got the victory. This match was fabulous, by the way. It went just under 20. Desperado ended up leading the Robbie, 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 oi, oi, oi chant afterwards. So Desperado really acting like a veteran babyface through most of this one.
Warrior kind of vibe.
A little bit, yeah. He is honorable now, and this whole babyface turn with the strong style faction seems to have served him well. And very gracious in victory. And in the end of the night, it was first place in the B block, El Desperado, second place, Master Wato. So we went into the semifinals on May 26th at Yoyogi National Stadium in Tokyo. 1,130 people for this one. And we found out a couple of things from the commentary as we went into these semifinals. We found out something very important, which is that Taiji Ishimori, as of now, is not needing surgery. He just needs rest. And that's going to be something that's very important. It looks like that could help him a lot. Of course, any kind of surgery on your neck is nerve-wracking. Doesn't mean he might not need it down the road. We'll see how recovery goes. But as of now, they're going to try to do this without surgery. And I just want to mention a comment from Brad right here. He said that pin was brilliant. Uncle Nobu rocked it. It really was cool. It was just a very, very well-worked finish there. So yeah, definitely props to both those guys. And then the other thing we found out was that Dan Moloney separated his damn shoulder on night 2 of this tournament and fought his way through the whole thing right there. So if you were wondering about his tough credentials, and I was not, I didn't need any convincing, but Moloney working that tour on a separated shoulder. Very impressive.
I will give him respect on that one.
And he got better as the tournament went on. Right. I'm not going to say that he rose to the level of some of the guys. Mike Bailey made the biggest impression of all right there. But Moloney earned his money with his final block match. There is a wonderful brawl with Clark Connors that he won by count out, by the way. The last night block, I'm going to give him props for that too, because that fight that went all through the building and just looked vicious. You don't get that from the junior heavyweight division in New Japan very often. No. You get a lot of dives, you get a lot of jumps. You can even get some technical matches on the mat when you see things with Kushida and you see things with other guys through the years who have done that. And this was just a not hardcore match, but it was a solid brawl between two guys that really know how to brawl well. And again, that's unusual for the junior heavyweight division in New Japan. Added a dimension to the tournament that was already one of the most varied and high quality tournaments we've ever had. And I just really enjoyed it. So Moloney ends his tournament on a high note with his best match in the whole thing. Hopefully his shoulder is okay and he can just rest it up a little bit now. But there you go.
Clark Connors did not have the tournament that I thought he was going to have, but better days ahead for him. And, you know, I think given the quality and the caliber and the performances of everybody in the tournament, I have nothing to complain about.
So we have a couple comments on Moloney here, or a couple of other comments. Brad mentions Moloney's finish of Robbie Eagles was spectacular. Yeah, just throwing Robbie around to get him into position with a separated shoulder. Yeah, exactly. And it takes a lot of trust to go up for that killer driller move right there, because essentially you're up in an almost a old school backbreaker position and then dropping him down into a pile driver. But Moloney is a big junior. And it has a lot of power there, and he is able to do that safely. And Colin's with us now. Good to see you, Colin. Glad you're here. I was wondering about that. I hadn't heard from him yet. It's not a Tuesday without Colin.
Hi, Colin.
There you go. So and we go on to the National Stadium in Yoyogi, which is a part of Metro Tokyo there, and we found out that good news on Ishimori. Then there were a couple of things on the undercard that are worth mentioning here, Jeremy. The first one was in the very first match. It was Kosei Fujita and Robbie Eagles getting a win over Clark Connors and Geto, and Fujita pinned Geto.
How about that?
That is very, very unusual. Now, yes, Geto is the guy that protects everyone in Bullet Club. He very frequently takes the fall for his own team. With that being said, the idea of someone who is still referred to as a young lion pinning a main roster guy virtually never happens. In fact, I can't remember the last time I saw it. I'm not. It's happened before. I know it's happened before, but I do not recall the last time.
It's like once every 3 years they pull this kind of thing. And
I've been keeping track for about 4, and I haven't seen it.
You know, I thought there was something like that around 2018, 2019.
Yeah, I don't remember. If it is, I don't recall. Anyway, point being, but that just shows you how rare this actually is. Now, Geto, being selfless, did not ask anyone else to do it. He did it himself. But it's another push in Fujita's direction. And they already separated him in a way by making him part of TMDK as a young lion. But then putting him over a main roster guy shows you that they really feel they have something special in him. And
it also puts over
not done by
TMDK in a way.
Say again?
It also puts over TMDK in a way, in that their training of Kosei Fujita allowed this to happen. Whereas, you know, you could argue that the training that the other young lions wouldn't have allowed them to be canny enough to pull this maneuver off.
Yeah. And then we moved on a little bit later. There were some other preview tags that were not of note, particularly. Nothing wrong with them, but no real storyline in them until we got to, I wanted to mention this. we had Tomohiro Ishii, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Kazuchika Okada in a non-title match against Shota Umino, Oscar Loibe, and Bolton Oleg.
Delightful.
And this match, huh?
Delightful. Delightful.
Oleg is still very, very green. And there were a couple of times he was utterly lost during this match. His footwork was all thrown off, and this was a rough one for him. And it shows you just how carefully they choreographed his Oiwa exhibition a little bit here. It's also worth mentioning that Oscar Loibe was really good in this match too. And this guy's coming along quite a bit. Loibe is really showing a lot, both in his facial expressions, his fire, and his work is getting a little bit better. Oleg also was doing his strikes like he was very worried about hurting somebody, which is something you just have to work out in time. And it's not the worst thing in the world to have a guy who's that freaking strong and not trying to hurt people, which is great. But I think that they'll probably get him to work on his strikes a little bit, lay him in a little more. But if I'm taking those strikes, if Oleg wants to go easy on me, he can. That's fine. But there's just a few things that we saw there. That this is as green as Oleg really looked. But he's going to come along. He'll be fine. But it just showed you just how new this guy really is in that match there. So
I am soaking up every moment I can of this Tanahashi, Ishii, Okada trio. Because I don't know how long it's lasting, but there's just little things about it that I am just tremendously enjoying about the act.
There's little subtext to almost everything when they wrestle each other. It is a good time, and I think we're going to be seeing more twists and turns in this. I don't think it's only to set up what we're going to see at Dominion. I think there's going to be more to this as it goes on. Colin mentions give me Oleg and Oscar one-on-one when they're ready. This was good. Yeah, Oleg has a little ways to go, but Oscar's just about there, and Brad noticed it too. He says, I really, really like Loibe. There's something there with him. I absolutely agree. And he's developing an interview style in English in his post-match comments that's pretty good. And almost every young lion says about the same things at the very first, which is, I just have to learn and keep improving, and I know I'll get that win someday, that type of thing. And Loibe adds a little bit to that. He elaborates upon that. He certainly says those correct things, but he has a little bit more pizzazz to his promos too. So if you can have some charisma in the ring, a little bit of fire as a babyface, and have a little bit of pizzazz in your promos, well, that's about as good a start as you're going to get on a young lion. So a lot of potential here.
Yeah, I think the fact that they've invested and remained invested in him all this time, even with all the other lions kind of elevating around him, just says that they are committed to him for the long haul, and they see something in him, and it's starting to shine.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit better than Nakashima, and getting up there with Oiwa, and Fujita is probably on a level above right now.
I would say so too. Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, again, there's not a dud in the bunch. I don't think. I don't think there's a dud in the bunch. It's really remarkable once they get in the ring how good these guys end up being, and Oleg will get there. So we're up to the semifinals in this card now, and the first one was Master Wato and Mike Bailey. Here's their, we have our graphic up here for the folks watching on YouTube, and that looks really good. So we have, this was almost all Mike Bailey early, foreshadowing the finish a little bit, going to give him his shine. Wato got a somersault plancha in, but he was back to selling soon after. This was mostly Bailey early on. And once Wato got a Vindaval on him, that began to make the match a little bit more even. We were around the 10-minute mark right at that point, and so things started to even up, and it wasn't all selling for Wato. Bailey went for his big spin kick. That's the one where his opponent's in the corner, and he just does the really good-looking spin kicks there as he kind of sort of a video game move where he kind of jumps and spins in the air and tries to get the kick, but Wato blocked it and hit the resetamente. I think I'm starting to learn how to say that now. Bailey hit the knee moonsault on the apron later, which looks horrible to deal with, horrible to have to take. Just imagine a guy doing a moonsault landing with his knees on your chest. Ugh. Then something happened that I was certainly not expecting. He hit the ultimate weapon, and I just thought, oh, okay, well, there it is. They're going to go right here with Mike Bailey, which I kind of thought we were going to get Mike Bailey and El Desperado in the finals.
Sure.
If you would
a lot of people did.
I thought so. So, yeah, and Wato kicked out. And you could tell that the crowd expected that to be the finish. Of course it did. They protected that move the whole tournament. But as it turns out, he kicked out, and it was a shock, and the crowd really responded to it. That was about the 15-minute mark. He went for the flamingo driver, but that was turned into a tombstone by Wato, and the guy starts rallying. Throughout the match, kicks to Master Wato's arm had hindered his attempts to hit his high-angle German. That was the story they were telling here. He kept kicking him in the arm a couple of times. He tried the high-angle German. He'd grab his arm. Can't quite lift him. So he couldn't do it, couldn't get that move. And when Bailey had the advantage, he tried the spin kick again, but this time he was intercepted with one of Wato's own. Wato came out of the corner and hit his own spin kick.
Hard. Those kicks against each other, by the way, gnarly. Yes. I watched that match twice, and the second time I watched, I'm like, those kicks look like they hurt. All of them.
Then Wato sucked it up, grabbed a hold of him, hit that high-angle German, and won the match. And so the crowd loved this. The crowd was all about this, and got the victory and went on to the finals. And I noticed that the commentary, I was laughing as he won because I just thought, how in the world are Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton going to crap on him and still manage to put this over? And it was something that they did improve on a little bit there. They were a little nicer to him, but it is interesting to me. After the semifinal, my note in my notebook was everybody else shows heart and guts, but they make Wato sound like he's dumb and lucky. And
there was a move that happened, and it was part of the story of the match. And even Kelly and Charlton fell for it. Wato was going to do a springboard, and he paused for a second. And then he went for the springboard, and Bailey caught him in a rear naked choke coming off of the springboard off the outside of the ring. And immediately Charlton went with there's the Wato from last year. Like, he can't quite seem to catch it. But it was all a part of the story that, like, they played off of that rather than it actually being, like, a fidget of Wato happening in the match. And I thought that was a little bit meta, but played well for what they were trying to do.
The commentary was better in the finals. They realized that maybe we should actually put over the guy being pushed for a change. That'd be nice. So that improved a lot in the finals right there. So Colin was pissed when Speedball lost. I was definitely surprised. I know. And then he also, Brad mentioned Speedball has the best, most precise kicks in the game today. Good Lord. The argument here, the guy's just phenomenal in this tournament. And the style in New Japan just really meshed well with him. And Bailey's good a lot of places. It's not like he's been floundering elsewhere, but
this is the best I think he's ever looked.
Yeah, and what was it when we had Mike on before, Mike Gilbert? I think he mentioned that Bailey is between stories in Impact a little bit. Not that he's not doing anything at all, but he's a little bit between his main stories. Yeah. And this has really made him, I hope, part of the New Japan landscape. I can't fathom that New Japan won't want him back at other times. It's just a matter of whether the schedule works out. But talk about a guy who came in and really showed up and became part of the main event mix in my mind. You could put Mike Bailey in there anytime you want, and I'm interested immediately. And that's not easy to do in this league.
I feel like the only reason we have Multiverse United too is because they can do Speedball and Will Ospreay that night. To be completely honest, because they didn't get to do it the first time around.
Let's hope. So that moved us on to the next match, which was Titan and El Desperado. So I missed out on the first one. There's no doubt in my mind El Desperado's winning this one. By God, he's going to get this. This is the whole idea here. And
just like we all thought.
LIJ was at ringside, and that's something that's a story they've been telling. Was since SANADA left, they have been backing each other up in the big matches. I don't know if they're going in the direction of we just need to unite now because we lost a man and maybe we learned a lesson from that, or if SANADA was the more aloof influence that led to them not supporting each other in the past. But whatever it is now, they're in each other's corner for the biggies now. And I think that's a nice little story to tell, especially since they're baby faces now. So, and they don't interfere. They're the only people that interfere really is House of Torture and stuff. But
it's a great dynamic with the crowd.
Yeah, and it really showed up during the finals of this tournament. So, this Jim and Yoyogi allowed Titan to do a big dive off the balcony. If you've ever watched the matches from Arena Mexico, there is a giant video screen and you come out high up in Arena Mexico, and you go down a flight of steps. And the flight, and on either side of the flight of steps are video screens that are ads during the match, and then promo videos for the wrestler being introduced as they're walking down the aisle. It's very cool looking at Arena Mexico right there. But it also is very conveniently raked and all that, so that there is a spot where you can jump off onto your opponent on the ramp, which always gets a big ooh and ah out of the Arena Mexico crowd. Well, Titan realized, it's about the right size, isn't it? And so he managed to work his way up there and do a really good-looking dive that Japanese crowds are not used to there. And
perfect catch, by the way.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
The entire sequence was amazing.
Very well done, and didn't take too long. The only other criticism you have with some of these balcony dives, it takes 10.5 minutes sometimes to get up there, and the guy's got to just sit there and wait patiently for someone to jump off after him. Titan got this done in a good, reasonable amount of time. Titan hit a somersault plancha, but then he missed a double stomp to the floor. He jumps off the top rope to the floor with the coup de grace, basically, and his leg just went rigid, straight up and down. Just looked like a horrible impact on his hips and knees. But he was okay. But that looked, yeah.
They made a lot of injuries look legit, and they weren't, or at least they weren't enough to stop the match. But Desperado, he sold like he sprained his ankle when he like fell out of the ring at one point. Titan was dying on his legs every 10th move. Continue. I'm sorry, but I was just so much to it.
Yeah, it's good. And Brad mentions one other thing that's really cool about the LIJ stuff. He loved Hiromu telling Titan to have a seat to rest during their tag team match the show before, so he wasn't tired for the final. That was kind of cool. Yeah,
thoughtful.
Hiromu's a playful guy, so it's fun to see stuff like that. And Numero Dos versus the Indian Deathlock. That's the submission move for Titan, and of course it leads to that Immortal, a kind of a Muda lock type of move. And but they were going in and out of those. Numero Dos was countered with a Destroyer at the 15-minute mark, and then Titan managed to get the coup de grace after missing it to the floor. He did get it in the ring, and then he locked in the Immortal and got the tap out. So there it was, and I was very surprised to be writing down that the final was going to be Wato versus Titan, but man, those were two terrific matches to get us there.
So you're telling me that they had Desperado built as an absolute beast and a monster for this entire back half of this tournament, only to have him put over Titan to make Titan look even better as a result? That is some chess level booking right there.
It works out if, the storyline is that Desperado chokes in the clutch, which means, of course, some year he will overcome that and win the thing.
Like not being able to beat Ishii when he had it in the bag about a month or so ago.
So maybe the not winning the big one thing is the story, the mountain for him to climb next. He's held the title before, of course, but he hasn't won this. He hasn't won perhaps in a big singles match at a thing like that. So I think that might be the story they're telling here, Jeremy. Yeah. They can't win the big one until he eventually does, right?
Yeah, the Strong Style stable has a lot of people that you want to root for that might be coming up short in a lot of ways, in a lot of different scenarios. And so that would play into that kind of mentality. I don't know. He is beloved by the fans. He's on a great run right now. So how long does that goodwill last until they're just like, oh, he's not the guy that New Japan wants to get? So there's a little bit of roulette there, but, as we say, in Ghetto we trust,
This is a story that works in Japan over and over again. It's a bit of a trope of Japanese wrestling. And that whole thing of coming up short, and finally getting it. Japanese crowds are more resilient as far as they don't give up on people with a few losses, especially if they realize this is the story you're telling, because it almost always pays off, which helps, right? So Kenta Kobashi, one of the greatest wrestlers that ever lived, famously lost, I don't even know how many. He was 0-50 or 60 some in singles matches before he finally won one, and then he would never beat the other pillars. He would always lose to Misawa, lose to Kawada, lose to Taue until that one time he overcame it, and then the place just went berserk. We just saw the story with Waka Tsukiyama in Stardom, where she was and something incredible, but always trying. So that whole thing of trying your best and just falling short but persisting, it hits home culturally in Japan with the fans. And when that story is paid off, when Waka pinned Nene Takahashi, it was a big pop. I don't even want to tell you what the pop was like when Kobashi finally beat Taue and won the Triple Crown. It's when it's done correctly, it's a big, just
a magnificent
emotion.
moment.
It is, and I think the Desperado is going to get one of those.
I hope
in
so,
the next
man.
year or two. Yeah,
that's all I want out of this, is that he is deserving of the big moment.
Yeah, I think we're going to get it. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. So I was on board with him from that match with Hiromu when he got his mask ripped off and he wrestled without the mask. That's happened to him a couple of times where he just wrestled with the mask hanging around his neck or whatever, just keeps firing away. And it was a brilliant match. I just thought, okay, this guy is indeed as special as I was hoping he would be. So we went on to the finals now. We've got a whole finals thing, and there was some news on the undercard of this one that we're going to talk about. On May 30th at the Yota Ward Gymnasium, 3,132 people in the gym for this. And again, we're coming back from the pandemic, and the crowds are open now. There aren't the restrictions. But Jeremy, I thought this was interesting. 3,132. It's the first crowd over 3,000 in that building since Dragon Gate, Dangerous Gate 2019. So one of their big shows. And all the time we go to the Yota Ward Gym, it hasn't gotten above 3K for New Japan until that. So this is the first time in almost 4 years, and around 4 years, that it has gotten over 3,000 there. And that was similar to Nagoya, a Dragon's Gate big show. They don't really have pay-per-views, but that type of major show that everything builds to was the last crowd as big as New Japan drew in Nagoya. Well, now this is the biggest crowd in this building since a Dragon's Gate major show in 2019. So
I'll tell you,
signs are pointing up.
We should have seen it coming that it was Wato's hometown.
Well, Osaka is Wato's hometown.
Oh, Osaka, my bad.
Yeah, he's from Osaka, which is where the Dominion match is going.
That's what it was. My bad.
No, that's okay. That's all right. But yeah, just all in all,
save that banger for that, and I ruined it.
No, sorry. It's one of those things where this tournament seemed to captivate the fans here. This was, and then of course on this show you did get to see that some of the heavyweight stars in the undercard. But
do you know if it sold out before the final was revealed, or if it sold out because the final?
Well, Yota Ward wasn't sold out.
We're not sold out. It hit over 3,000. I apologize.
Yeah, I don't know the ticket when the tickets sold for this one. I don't know, but yeah, good, very good crowd. So
it's reflective of a quality product.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into some of the news on the undercard of this show before we get to the final. We had the House of Torture against Chaos, Evil, Yujiro Takahashi, and Sho against Goto, Yoshihashi, and Toru Yano, and this match ended with a no contest, which is very rare for New Japan, 9 minutes and 7 seconds. Now, why did that happen? Well, because Aaron Henare and the Great Okan came and sat ringside. And at some point, the House of Torture were so perturbed by this that they went and attacked them instead of just their opponents in the match, threw them in the ring. The referee had to throw it all out because all these teams were brawling with each other. Now, as we've talked about before, the match at Dominion was supposed to be Bishamon, that's Goto and Yoshihashi, the Aussie Open, the tag team champions at the time, and House of Torture, with the story being that Aussie Open was so annoyed with House of Torture that they don't deserve a title shot. Bishamon does, but we know we're not going to get rid of House of Torture because these guys are going to keep attacking and doing underhanded things. So we're just going to get them all in the ring at one time, defend against both of them at once, get it over with. That was the story. Well, then Mark Davis had to have his knee scoped. He's not going to be able to make the match, so the title was stripped from them. What I thought was an interesting way of getting out of a House of Torture one-on-one match, which Bishamon is a really good tag team. They are not miracle workers, and so they were going to be stuck with Yujiro and Evil here, and we're going to get a one-on-one. Yoshihashi and Goto can only do so much. So the way they were going to, I thought this was clever that the other quote-unquote tag team in United Empire, Henare and Okan, said, hey, those are United Empire's belts, and we want to be represented in this as well. And so by having these three-way brawls break out, in a couple of different instances, they have an excuse now to make it the three-way match it was originally designed to be. Only now the other tag team from United Empire is involved and the titles are vacant. Whoever wins gets the belts, which is what would have happened at Dominion anyway. And we're kind of back where we started, just with the replacement team.
You just have the proxy team and everything else is set as it was.
Yeah. And there you see right there, they just were plopped down at ringside while Evil was fighting with, I believe that's Goto on the outside there. And they just decided, we're just going to hit them too. We're just
Okan all front and center right there.
Okay, well, yeah, he's man spreading, isn't he there? But there you have it. So we'll have that one. And then after that, we had the very interesting match, I thought, with Shota Umino teaming with El Desperado, Ren Narita, and Mike Bailey. That's a nice little mix. Against Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tomohiro Ishii, the six-man tag champions, and Taguchi. Ryusuke Taguchi got in this one. Fun match. And not too much to tell about this one until the very end, when Shota Umino, who is, of course, obsessed with Kazuchika Okada, went a little crazy and just threw a ringside table in Okada's face.
Table at him, Steven.
Flattened him. Okada sold it like he was not cold, but certainly loopy as all hell. And then he made the challenge saying he wanted a shot at the never open weight six-man tag team titles, and he had two partners in mind. My fingers, Jeremy, were crossed. Because here's the thing. We had Wheeler Yuta, who's a perfectly capable wrestler, at Resurgence.
Mm-hmm.
I like Wheeler. Nothing wrong with Wheeler. He's the only member of the Blackpool Combat Club that isn't a dream guy for me in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
He's a little shit.
I know. I like him. He's good. But
no, Claudio he's a little shit. I love him.
but Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli are both guys that I have been dying to see in a New Japan ring. And so my fingers were crossed. He said, I will be there. Jon Moxley will be there. The crowd loved that. Love the idea of Mox and Okada going at it again. And Claudio Castagnoli. And I was so happy to hear it. And I've been banging the drum since he left WWE for this guy to be part of G1. I think Claudio is a New Japan wrestler. He just doesn't know it yet. And I think
you're right.
I think he is perfect. A perfect mix for Okada, for Tanahashi, for Suzuki, for Ishii, for good grief. Naito and Claudio, this guy is so good. And of course, I mean, Bryan Danielson too. I mean, for the love of God. But one of the best wrestlers on earth. Let's get him in here. But this is something that I've really been hoping for. I'm going to get my dream, Jeremy. I'm going to see Claudio in a New Japan ring. Couldn't be happier with this one.
So here's where it gets interesting. And here's where the AEW factor comes in. After the Anarchy in the Arena and Blackpool Combat Club, that has just been named to be fighting Okada, Kenny Omega, with my own 2 ears and 2 eyes, laid down and gave his drama performance speech and indicated that he had a couple of friends that weren't in AEW that he was thinking that he might need to call to, help them with this Blackpool problem. And I do believe that the Omega Powers were a tag team earlier this year in January. And I do think that I have referenced this in the past that Omega might be recruiting Okada for some shenanigans down here in the future, as well as a certain Kota Ibushi, who is also, from what I understand, not persona non grata. He is welcome in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and you may see him there. You may see him in AEW. All bets are off when it comes to that. And my friend, this is about to escalate into something much larger than I think you and I realize. Claudio Castagnoli going from one direction to the other is going to indicate that quite a few people might be coming in the other direction relatively soon. Maybe June 7th. We might be seeing some New Japan people there. And Claudio being one of the guys to kick it off is absolutely the play. There is a point.
The grand prize can come later. It can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a point where Danielson is going to blow the roof off the doors, if you will, when he appears.
Blow the roof off the doors.
Right. It is going to be an explosive moment.
Oh,
But
my goodness. Not since Gorilla
Claudio-
Monsoon have we mixed metaphors like that.
That is actually a fantasy football reference from Matt.
literally hanging from the rafters.
The ridiculousness of it. But Claudio deserves his moment as well. And this is going to be his moment. And he is going to open a lot of eyes. Bro, this whole Dominion card is contingent on this Blackpool match getting mainstream interest in this whole thing. And Claudio is a guy that's going to get the mainstream interest for the people watching Ring of Honor, AEW, who've known WWE. If you're interested, he is a gateway guy for this match.
That's well put. Yeah, he's a gateway. He's a gateway drug for New Japan Pro Wrestling. I like it. And something that Brad mentioned here, which is worth mentioning. He's absolutely right. Speedball and Desperado's bromance is wholesome. Is Speedball now part of Strong Style? I hope. Hey, why not? If they do need more members of that group, by the way.
I think that would be a fantastic addition. And yes, I am all for it. If I have a vote, I vote yes.
So Bailey and Desperado after the match were kind of high-fiving and things, and then all of a sudden they started smacking each other, giving each other quick little kicks, and the people thought, are they turning on each other? They looked. We
thought it was a Dominion match at first.
They started laughing and hugging in the backstage area. They're just talking about how much they like each other. They both gave each other a kiss on the cheek. So these two are down with each other. They like it. They both friends and fighting.
You've seen Ted Lasso, right?
Oh, jeez, are you kidding me?
Football is life
tonight. I'm just
football is life. The speedball version is in the backstage of a New Japan Pro Wrestling ring, just quietly saying, "Wrestling is life."
Oh man, I'm mentally preparing myself to say goodbye to Lasso tonight. It's going to be a tough night.
I hope they might come back for one more season, but if the magic is it tonight, what a run!
My hope is that, from all accounts, that he's done with doing Ted Lasso, but maybe not done with all the characters. There might be spin-off in there somewhere for somebody. Me too. So moving back to this, we had a final after all these things. So there was an LIJ Just Five Guys tag match that there. Nothing wrong with it. Again, well wrestled, but no real storyline implications. So we move on to what was a phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Best of the Super Juniors final match between Master Wato and Titan. 24 minutes, 48 seconds. Felt like half that long. LIJ and Tenzan, Hiroshi Tenzan were at ringside. Of course, Tenzan for a long time has been portrayed as the mentor to Wato. Might be literally true for all I know. It turns out we did find out that Wato in the very beginning was Tenzan's young boy. I don't know if people that are listening and watching know this. Probably our audience does. We got a smart one. But young lions are assigned to top guys, and their job is to, of course, carry the luggage, sometimes wash the gear. When Tomohiro Ishii was a young boy, he had to mix drinks for Riki Choshu, for instance. He had to get him his vodka sodas. And stir him with his finger. He didn't have time for you to go find a straw. Choshu was a tough guy, man. There no germ was going to go get Riki Choshu. But stuff like that. You're basically an errand boy. I would imagine that Okada's young boy goes and gets him his Yoshinoya before his matches. So things like that. So it turns out that these two have had some sort of connection for a very long time. Tenzan has been portrayed as his coach at ringside before, and he was there at ringside for the finals. So in this one, back and forth match, it was absolutely beautiful. Some highlights were a springboard moonsault and a tope suicida to the outside by Titan. They teased a count out after that, but of course no one was going to finish this one by count out. There was a really good kicking sequence back and forth at about the 15-minute mark. Titan has really good strikes, which isn't something that every luchador has, but he has it. And he's a little more well-rounded when it comes to that. As part of it is the Japanese experience, and part of it is just him being a very, very talented guy. And I think he's one of the best luchadors in addition to working this style. Vindeval for Wato began the wear-down portion of the program where these guys started getting their submission holds on each other. You saw the deathlock from Titan. You get the Vindeval, and at the 20-minute mark, he had the deathlock locked in. But Wato fought off the Immortale lock, which was cool. He was doing the whole bridge back, and Wato was struggling mightily to keep those arms and hands from locking under his chin, and he made the ropes. Fans thought that might have been the finish coming up. I
Mhm.
think they believed that he was going to lock in that immortal lock. So when he made the ropes,
It was
made
so dramatic.
made a few more believers out of that crowd, didn't it? And Titan kicked out of the Sentakaku, which is that the high angle German. We have a name for it now. There, the high angle German. He kicked out of that, which surprised everybody. There's the Resetamente, which was reversed into La Mistica for 2. After that, a coup de grace. I'm going to jump off the top rope with the double stomp. That one only got 2. So we're at that portion of the program now where you realize everyone is only like 1 or 2 moves away. But after that coup de grace, Wato managed to regain control and hit that high angle German, and then Resetamiente again, a really hard one, really drilled him into the mat and got the 3 count. And Master Wato, the best of the Super Juniors 30 champion, and I have to say, in a tournament that saw some of the most varied and entertaining matches, one of the best tournaments I have seen going all the way back to the mid-90s, when you had some of the best wrestlers in history in these tournaments. It's been as good as anything I have seen since then. And there have been some great tournaments over the years. This was worthy of a great tournament. It was a great match, a great final, 2 wonderful performances. It was absolutely worthy of best of Super Juniors 30. And what can you say, Master Wato? I didn't have him on the radar as winning this thing at the beginning, but
Nobody did.
when it was all over, he did not look out of place.
No, he earned it. Here's how highly I thought of this match. Watched Night of Champions, watched Double or Nothing, watched all the Super Junior main matches. This was the best match of the entire weekend. This was the best match. This was better than the 4-way title match at AEW, better than Gunther versus Ali. This was it. Go out of your way to watch this match if you want to know what the best match of Double or Nothing weekend was, because this was it. And I know other people agree with me, and you'll see that soon.
Brad is right on board. He said, when this was over, I called this match beautiful art. The way they built the match was done so perfectly. The most random final ended up being one of the best matches of the year. Yeah, well said. I had both of these guys losing in the semifinals, and then they delivered a final that may have been better than anything than I believe. Go ahead.
One of the things that I went into this best of the Super Juniors was I methodically kind of crossed off people that I felt had a legitimate title shot for the junior heavyweight title at some point recently. And I had Wato in there, but he was in the 4-way at Wrestle Kingdom. And so he didn't really get his one-on-one shot. So if you think about the story being that Wato fought to finally get his one-on-one shot that he was robbed of when he consistently pinned Taiji Ishimori in the fall with those flash pins, and then Hiromu and was it Desperado that came out as well and challenged for the 4-way. Who's to say that Wato wouldn't have won that one-on-one match then? Now may be his time to shine. Wato-Mania might be here. He's got his one-on-one match for the person that stole the title from him.
Well, it's not with Colin. He said he's not. I wasn't a fan of this outcome. I still don't really get the weight of the Grandmaster deal. They haven't really explained what the weight of the Grandmaster exactly is, or who the Grandmaster is. Is Wato supposed to be the Grandmaster? I don't know.
Master of the junior heavyweights at this point.
Yeah, he's I'm not saying that weight of the Grandmaster thing makes a lot of sense. I don't think it does. I will agree there. It's a weak part of the character, but I think that Wato's journey has been effective. And they have asked him, he has done everything they have asked him to do. They asked him to step up and get in there with Desperado, Hiromu, and Ishimori at the Tokyo Dome. He did it. He's been a pretty good wrestler all through the year. And then when it was time to really roll in this tournament, he did, and he delivered some amazing performances in here. So I think that he has done everything they've asked him to do. And I like him a little better than Colin does, but that's okay. That's all subjective. That's all subjective. That's fine. I do think that his effort has been rewarded.
I want to take back something I said that I thought Wato needed maybe 3 weeks ago. You ready for this? I do not think Wato needs a goatee anymore.
Okay.
That was my thing. Wato needs to change. Maybe give him a goatee. I felt like this for about 5 minutes on a show a while back. And I wanted to close that chapter on this book because I am nothing if not a completist when it comes to my references.
And Colin's asking, do we know how Ishimori is? Yeah, it's worth mentioning again. We got to it at the very top of the show, so I'll mention it again here. So far, surgery is not needed. They're going to try to heal it with rest. That could always change down the road depending on how well it heals with rest. As of right now, they don't want to cut on his neck, which is great news. Anytime you have to have neck surgery, there's a lot of treacherous complications possible in there. Now, no doubt,
not ideal.
It's just, if you can avoid it, avoid it. And right now they're saying that they might be able to heal it with rest, and they're going to try that. So right now, no surgery for Taiji Ishimori, but a lot of rest. He's going to have to stay home.
I would rule him out for a considerable period of time.
Yeah, but again, with surgery, geez, man, half the time you end up with something that hurts almost as much or in different ways after a neck surgery. So if we can avoid that, let's do it.
Just wish him well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a terrific wrestler, and by most accounts, when out of character, decent dude. Most people seem to like the guy. So yeah, and then all right. The other thing that happened, it wasn't just that Aussie Open has vacated the titles. Since we last had this show, Aussie Open have been announced as new members of the AEW roster. They have been they are now elite and all that. So this goes back to something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Jeremy, which is they are getting a second national television show on Saturday, AEW Collision. They now have 5 hours of TV to fill a week with Rampage. If you want to count Ring of Honor, it's 6. And I guess they feel like they need wrestlers, and I suppose they do. Now, they have a roster full of guys who aren't making it on TV now, but none of those guys are really particularly over, and I think a lot of them don't have a ton of potential to get over. So with this new show, they're going to need new guys, and I mentioned this could be a tricky thing for New Japan. It might be a little more difficult to get and keep those two things, get and keep really good foreign talent, just because now there's even another national television show that has to be filled with charismatic performers. Aussie Open are certainly that. Tony Khan understands a great tag team when he sees one, and he snatched him up as soon as he could. Even though Mark Davis is injured right now, they still signed him. They had that match with Kyle Fletcher and what was it, Orange, right? Yeah, and terrific job Kyle did in that match right there. Which
with the immediate graphic of being all elite afterwards.
yeah, no kidding. I guess he signed the contract during the match at one point when he was thrown out of the ring.
Strike while the iron hot. To give Tony Khan credit though, I understand that he paid for the surgery, the MCL surgery. Good. For Davis.
Wow, cool. That's nice. And Tony understands that that's a great team. I don't blame him for signing him. It does make me a little bit worried that the really good foreign talent might not be available. Now, because they're in AEW doesn't mean they can never be in New Japan. Not even close. We're seeing all kinds of crossover. But as far as just being tour after tour after tour and a consistent one, I don't know.
You may be seeing them on New Japan strong domestic shows more than you're seeing them on main New Japan shows on the regular, if not the big shows. Just regular booking on New Japan is gone. Their priority is AEW. I will be okay for the big programs that they show up because they were fast getting to the point where they were big match stars that shouldn't have been on the mid card all that much longer.
Colin mentions the AEW is huge. There definitely needs to be some brand split of some sort. Yeah, they're not sure if they're going to do that or just kind of keep people apart. There are certain people that can't be with other people in AEW. So, without getting into all that, because we only have a 90-minute
minefield.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think there's going to be a group of guys that are mostly on Saturdays and mostly on Wednesdays. And just like with WWE, there's probably going to be some crossover, whether they admit that there is or not. But it's a thing where Aussie Open, and I love this one. Here's let's go into the tinfoil hat thing from Brad here. I like it. Tinfoil hat. Ghetto allows Tony Khan to sign these talents since AEW can pay more, with the caveat that they will work NJPW when needed. The only issue with that is if you're the guy paying them, you decide when and where they work. And here's the thing about Aussie Open. They're really friggin' good. So if
where
Tony gets them and then he starts saying, these guys are great, I'm going to put them in a major program and either put them in the tag team title picture or give them a major feud. And all of a sudden, it's a little trickier to say, I don't know, Ghetto. I kind of need them there. I can't really let them go for 3 weeks for a tour here. I don't know. You start to see him less and less and only on special occasions. And I think that Aussie Open are talented enough to get over to the point that maybe we don't see him as much in Japan, which is unfortunate. And maybe I'm just glass half empty on that from a New Japan perspective. They're awfully good. I don't see them floundering to the point where Tony Khan just says, "Yeah, take them for a few weeks."
If I could book this the way I want to book this, is FTR faces the winner of the Dominion match, and they take the titles. So FTR has all 3 titles: the Strong, the IWGP, and the AEW titles. After that, Aussie Open returns and challenges them for All In at Wembley, and they take all the titles. And then on sparse defenses here and there going through the World Tag League, Aussie Open is around. Perhaps they drop the AEW title so that they're not the focus of the division there. You take them to Wrestle Kingdom, and then you figure it out from there. But I do feel like the rest of 2023 with New Japan, while not as frequent, will be important for them, and they will be a huge factor of it. The other thing I wanted to point out with all this, as we were speaking about United Empire, is that Will Ospreay came out with an interview today with Chris Van Vliet on Insight, and he said that he is expecting to work out something with New Japan Pro Wrestling in the foreseeable future because he does not want to move to America, and the lifestyle that he wants to lead is contingent on that. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a lock with New Japan, but this is strong negotiating power for him to make it clear what he wants out of the future. And if New Japan can make that work, he will want to be with New Japan. The ball is in New Japan's court. They're giving him all. He's giving them all the information about what they need, what he needed to make it work. Is Ospreay important enough to do that for them? I sure as hell hope so. But, we don't know until we know.
So we'll see how this all turns out. And I'm rooting for there to be cooperation so that these people can make their appearances back and forth and things. But I do worry a little bit about that. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, totally fair to worry. Like, everything can change in an instant with the talent that is available at New Japan. 7 years ago, every time you turn around, a talent was getting poached for WWE for their developmental territory, and they were looking for the next people up. We may be in a similar scenario, but at least this time with AEW, there is an opportunity for cooperation so that the door isn't closed and you say goodbye forever. The Jay White thing really changed the dynamic of how they have to work through when a talent leaves, because they created some unnecessary barriers that made a little more headaches with booking that they needed to, and they're going to have to work that out in the near future.
My only reason for being skeptical of that scenario you laid out for the tag team titles is we just went through half a year where they couldn't get the hands on their own tag team champions. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know if you get AEW contracted talent and just give them the belts and hope that you can make deals for them to come and make defenses again 2 years in a row. But maybe Ghetto just thinks, well, we can feature other titles.
If it's a big moment, though, and they were able to really put a spotlight on that in front of 65,000 people, sometimes you just got to do it.
And Brad mentions we're going to be seeing some more Desperado stateside, that he's going from the Best of Super Juniors tournament to the Tournament of Survival for Game Changer Wrestling this weekend in Atlantic City. So
the 12th and final entrant, I read.
And let's just hope that he doesn't base. Well, he's been to the United States before, so he's not going to base all the U.S. on Atlantic City. But anyway, he's going to be there for Game Changer. That'll be a big deal for him too. That'll be a nice little thing. Introduction to him to an audience that is probably aware of him, maybe haven't seen everything he can do. Only some of that crowd will have seen some New Japan World, so they're going to get a look at Despy, which is cool.
He deserves to be a talent of higher recognition right now.
And Colin mentions that Ospreay needs to stay with New Japan. Hey, preaching to the choir here. I want to.
Do you want to talk about Altogether now, or do you want to talk about Dominion?
Let's go with Dominion, because Dominion is this Sunday. It's coming up.
Bottom of the card or top of the card?
We will start at the main event and work back.
Got it.
There's my coughing fit. I knew it was coming sooner or later. So, I don't know how people talk for 3 hours on the radio like
It's
that.
amazing, isn't it? You got to get like some type of soothing cranberry drink that just is
I don't know how they do it.
throat.
I do not know. Seems like I always end up.
I thought I was losing my voice on a Sunday, and I was worried because I wasn't talking all that much yesterday, and still a little dry today, but I'm persevering.
That Vegas air too, man.
Oh God,
it's funny that there's a cliche you hear all the time. Well, it's a dry heat. It is very, very different, and it will just. It's not just that your sweat evaporates; it draws it out of you. It's like you're covered in salt. You just come through, and it just
and the mildly ashen air.
Well, I have a reason for that too. Very, very, very quickly, and then we'll get back to wrestling. But because it's so hot. People have tried every plant and tree in the world to try to establish a little bit of shade. And that way, no matter what you're allergic to, it's there in Las Vegas for you somewhere. So there's no native trees. Everything's imported. And so if you live there, it's like if you're allergic to anything, somebody has brought that
cocktail of antihistamine.
Yeah, and try to irrigate it and do everything you can to get it set up so that people aren't just sitting there baking.
Tell me how you really feel, Steven.
No, it's true. And it's why
believe you.
There's tremendous allergies in Vegas. You wouldn't think. You'd think you'd move to the desert to get away from the allergies, and it doesn't work in Las Vegas because almost everything's in the air out there. It's something I learned.
I ended up in a casino that allowed smoking in the casino area, so
almost all of them are still smoking. They're all still smoking except for a couple.
But yeah, I wasn't in a whole lot, but my home hotel had smoking inside. And
well, you're not there. You're not there anymore. No one will knock on your door. Which casino did you guys stay in?
I was at the New York by myself.
Okay, yeah, New York's not bad.
No, it's fine. It's central to everything. It was a home base to get wherever I needed to go. And man,
the show was at T-Mobile, right? The show was at T-Mobile?
right next door. Yeah. And then the Cosmopolitan had a suite party. There was a great dinner at the Mandalay Bay. This, there, and everywhere. It was just a great time.
Cool. All right, Dominion. And that is going to be June 4th on Sunday at Osaka Joe Hall, the big building now. No more little Edion Gymnasium. We are in the big building. And they mentioned that the G1 Climax lineups will be announced at Dominion. So we will get at least a look at who's going to be in the tournament this year. So looking forward to seeing what surprises may be in store. So Claudio,
they made a point to explain exactly where on the card they were going to tell you the G1 was. And I think that might have been by design.
It's about halfway through, right?
Yeah, right after I believe the Evil match. We'll get there. It's in the
we'll get to that. And so, we're looking at this. SANADA taking on Yota Tsuji, returning from excursion, his first match back for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. So we have not seen Yota Tsuji since he speared the living hell out of SANADA and laid out the entire group of just 5 guys. This makes me think that I believe Yota Tsuji is going to win this match. And here's my thought process on this, Jeremy. I think that if they were going to have him lose, they would have put him in the preview tags and have him steamroll everybody all the way to the match, just to make him look like a world beater, so that when SANADA wins, he can win by the skin of his teeth, hit his big move, escape with the title, and say, man, I just beat this monster of a guy that just came back. The fact that they aren't doing any of that no preview tags, nothing to build him up, makes me think he's actually going to go over, because if we don't see him for years, he has that big entrance where he surprises everybody and then just loses his first match. I'm not saying it's impossible, because I know Jay White lost to Tanahashi, when he first came in. I get all that. I just feel like with Yota Tsuji being in Japan right now, and of course he went back after a little bit and worked for CMLL a little, but he could have made a preview tag on this semifinals or finals night and just have him kill everybody. And they didn't do it. And it just makes me think that maybe this is a launch of Yota Tsuji right here. And that's just my thought on that. I just feel like if he were going to lose, they would have worked a little harder to make him look great before the main event here that he's having. So my early thought is we might see a title change right here. SANADA has already gotten what he needs to get out of that title. And if SANADA keeps the belt, I got no problem with it. He's a terrific wrestler, and I like this new iteration of him. I'm just reading tea leaves a little bit, and perhaps I'm overthinking it. But I'm kind of predicting a title switch here.
I don't know. For me, I was thinking about who needs this win more. And right now, I'm thinking Sanada needs this win more.
Well, Brad agrees with you. Yeah.
Essentially, Yota Tsuji is a blank slate. If he wins or if he loses, his ceiling is still undefined.
Okay.
If Sanada wins or loses, his ceiling is more defined. He is the guy that had one title defense and couldn't make it through. And going into the G1, he would need quite the campaign for rehabilitation. Yota Tsuji doesn't necessarily need that. Now, I'm going to go to mute right now because my dog is going wild. But my logic is Sanada is going to win this one because he needs to win.
By the way, folks, this is not the first time his dog has gone nuts when talking about Sanada on this show, and I'm not joking about that. If you go back to when his dog has his little fits, it's often about Sanada. So there you have it. Apparently a big Sanada fan, but that's all right. Brad agrees with you. He says this is a very interesting main event. I think Sanada needs the win more than Yota does right now. Both of you make really good points about that, by the way. Yeah. I'm just saying that it really bothered me, but it affected my thinking that there were no previews at all from him.
Sure.
So where does Sanada go?
It's a completely different dynamic that they're taking to tell you. When we were chatting about this on the Discord, I wondered if Yota Tsuji was the Jeff Cobb of LIJ.
Well, that's another point. He's not officially a member of LIJ. In fact, LIJ has not acknowledged him at all so far. So I'm very curious to see if he actually is a member of LIJ.
He did do the fifth, but no one has really tacitly said anything. He hasn't been around.
No, and Naito hasn't said a peep. That's not unusual, but Hiromu hasn't said a peep. Shingo Takagi hasn't said a peep about him.
If you establish him and you leave the mystique that he could go all the way to the top on his first night, and he doesn't, that's not a big deal. But like you've set that tone of him being able to reach that peak on the first night. You've almost made him in a way where winning the title is putting more pressure on him than you need.
It's interesting though, and I go back to the Jay White thing because he lost his first attempt to Tanahashi. But my point on Jay White is that it's not apples and apples because Jay winning that title wasn't the story. Jay upending Chaos was the story, and turning on Okada and turning with Geto and all that. So him losing to Tanahashi was more to show that he wasn't content in Chaos either. So it's a different story here. He doesn't come in as part of a faction and things. So
you were right on the Wato thing, and I'm honestly 100% 50-50 on this. It could go either way, and it could go horribly right or horribly wrong depending on how they move forward. But it is a wild time in Dominion, and you just don't all that off.
He'll go mute for a second here while he gets that together. I think LIJ coming out during the previous show was done for this match, writes Brad. They come out for the new guy, Yota, but they didn't when Sanada was there. Makes it more interesting. Yeah, that this whole thing about them coming out for one another now is a real interesting dynamic because it never happened during Sanada. And in fact, when Sanada debuted, when Evil debuted, it was because they were interfering in each other's matches. When they stopped that, they didn't really support each other much. In fact, there were a couple of times there were awkward beatdowns of LIJ guys where you're sitting there wondering where the hell is the rest of this faction? Why aren't they helping each other? And it was odd and it felt weird. And now that they're all out at ringside with one another, is it because Sanada isn't there or in reaction to Sanada leaving? Like I said, is this them thinking, we need to support each other now. We need to learn from losing Sanada. Or was the whole thing was we weren't coming out there partially because of Sanada. Maybe he was kind of a divisive force is how they could play it. So both are very, very good possibilities and fascinating, isn't it? I mean, to have a young lion come back, look as impressive as he has in his match with Tomohiro Ishii and then in his return angle where he challenged Sanada to main eventing the second biggest show of the year. This is the New Japan SummerSlam.
I felt so good about him when he came out of that Royal Quest match. He just looked great. And he reminded me of like a Chris Jericho, just a bigger Chris Jericho. And now he's coming off like Edge and Roman Reigns. Like these are all big star vibes that he is carrying off for himself. And it's like it's very difficult to emulate that.
He's shown main event charisma in Mexico as well, which is not an easy place to show main event charisma. Just ask some of the people that have been there on excursions. So that's the World Heavyweight title match. And then we have a very interesting Junior Heavyweight title match, Hiromu Takahashi against Master Wato. If Wato goes all the way and wins the junior heavyweight title, I'm okay with it. I don't think he needs to. I think we have seen each step of the way help him. I think he was helped by that 4-way performance at the Tokyo Dome. I think he is helped already by winning the Best of the Super Juniors 30. I don't think he has to win this one, Jeremy. Wouldn't bother me if he did. Hiromu is, I've mentioned it over and over again, he's Liger. He can come in and out of the title picture, and it always makes sense. And he's going to have to be the guy that ultimately puts people over. He's the only guy that can really say, this dude is a main eventer because he beat Hiromu. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen at Dominion. I think Hiromu can win this one and move on with the belt if they decide to. I think the job done, mission accomplished with making Master Wato a main eventer off of this. So if they want to go all the way with him, fine. Hiromu isn't hurt by losing to anyone. He's a made man. But he doesn't have to win this one, and I'm leaning a little bit more towards Takahashi. It's close, though.
This is what I meant by all bets are off. You could go either guy winning on both of these two, the sub-main event and the main event, and I'm not sure how much the overall landscape of New Japan really changes. Hiromu's still going to be a made guy. Even if he doesn't have that title, he's going to be in high-profile matches. Yeah. Wato, he could really use this, and I feel like this is the time to elevate somebody really, really new that hasn't been taken to that level before. And there are a number of matches on the card that don't have the opportunity to really elevate a guy more than they already have been besides these top two matches. So if one of them wins over the champion, I kind of think the other one doesn't. Mm-hmm. And if I'm leaning towards Yota not winning, I would kind of go towards Wato winning. But it could go, like I said, it could go either way, and I could just be completely reading the situation wrong. And we come back the next week, and we're talking about what great matches they were and how excited we are for the direction.
I'm going to make a point that even argues with myself, because I think it is fair to point it out. Here's how little Hiromu Takahashi actually needs the junior heavyweight title. He was the biggest junior heavyweight star in the company all of the second half of last year, and he lost the match at Dominion, and Taiji Ishimori was the champion.
Right.
But Hiromu was easily the biggest star in that division without the belt.
And there are opportunities for him to have matches that are special and maybe much more up in the air about the result if he didn't have the title.
And Brad says if New Japan's serious about doing this youth movement, Wato wins here. Yeah, I mean, it's close. I'm leaning slightly toward Hiromu only because I think Tsuji might win, but it's close. And like I said, 7 title matches on this card. Some champions are going to win, some aren't. So there's plenty of opportunities to have switches, even if you don't do it here, or this could be one of them. Who knows? Speaking of which, never open weight 6-man title.
Oh, look at that!
How high up? Big time and high up on the card for this belt. But look at the star power in this one. We have the champions: Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tomohiro Ishii against Claudio Castagnoli, Shota Umino, and Jon Moxley. I have been thinking about this match. I have no idea who might win, who might lose, who takes the fall, who gets the fall. I'm just looking forward to this one like crazy. I can't wait for this.
This is the single most exciting match that I've been looking forward to in the last 2 months. Since they began this tease of Okada teaming with Tanahashi and Ishii versus the Strong Style faction. Speaking of Strong Style, this has been very quietly the best feud in wrestling. I know that you have the Anarchy and the Arena stuff between the Elite. This is very much adjacent to it, but the energy and the vibe and the motivation of everybody involved all is different, and it's very low key and complex how the separate factors are coming into this. And I feel like we are just at the tip of the iceberg of just how cool this is going to be. And this is the opening. This is not even the opening salvo. The Resurgence match was the opening salvo, but things are escalating and they will continue to escalate. And that is basically my feelings on the matter. And I am just please make this happen.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a blow off of any kind. I think
Not
we're
even
setting up
remotely.
things later on. So yeah, and I mean, as far as the best storyline in wrestling, I'm going to stick with the Bloodline, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens type of thing, which has been amazing. But this has been special. It's been fun to watch and see the twists and turns. It's got a lot of layers to this. You have like you said, the Elite versus Blackpool Combat Club in the U.S., which weaves through Shota Umino sticking his nose into it and Okada getting into it and things. So it's all going to come together somewhere. It'll be fun.
And the fantastic thing about it is Shota has been positioned front and center for so much of this. Yeah, Moxley is the boogeyman and the specter of him arriving is there. But Shota has looked strong. You saw that table spot from the other match. They're not messing around that this is just kid stuff. And Okada's tacit frustration and annoyance with these young wrestlers coming to challenge him is just one of the greatest storylines of 2023.
Chris Charlton with a fantastic line on one of these shows. I wish I could remember. I think it was the semifinals or something where he said Okada has a new baby. And he says, hey, I got enough kids at home. I don't have to deal with you pricks. Now here, I don't want to listen to it. I love that. And then that whole attitude of Okada just being irritated, it's not hatred toward Umino, although it's getting there. But his whole thing was just like, you little shit, like, I do not have to deal with you. You are not.
I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah. They like, what are you doing out here? You got to earn your way up here as a kid, and then now he's just getting annoyed with him. It's really fun to watch. And Brad writes, do you think Shooter's too Tanahashi-like as he is now, while also having the attitude of Jon Moxley? And
I think that's how you have to be in 2023 if you want to be a Tanahashi-like.
Yeah, I think he's mixing in the right attitude with it. I kind of like this, that he's not he still dresses like Tanahashi and the hair like Tanahashi and things, but he's starting to act a little more like Mox. And
a little bit of Thug Life John Cena in there as well.
I think it's going to come to a crossroads at some point in this feud where he's going to drop one or the other and just be one of those things. And I think it's the battle for his soul a little bit here. Is he a Moxley or is he a Tanahashi? And Colin thinks BCC wins this one with the Okada-Umino feud continuing. Yep, I think you're right. And, I think you're right that the feud's going to continue. I don't know who's going to win this match because I'm looking at these 6 guys. Someone has to get pinned. It almost seems like Ishii is the one that would take the least damage, but it could go anywhere. I mean, they might have Umino beat Okada just to have him lose his shit completely. It could be that. It could be Okada beating Umino again and Moxley attacking Okada afterwards. There's so many ways this could go that could continue on.
I think there's going to be a very strong Blackpool dominant beginning of the summer that sets up a lot of people getting their revenge on Blackpool by the end. And so you don't do this match unless you're going to do a title change or unless a title change or there are really big things coming out of it. And going into Forbidden Door, if these 3 people had these 2 AEW wrestlers were to carry a title, that's the kind of thing that is good cross promotion for the 2 brands, if you will, to really set a spotlight. And them walking around with never titles, people wanting to know what that meant, go watch this show on New Japan World for $10. You can watch it all month long before Forbidden Door 2. It just makes too much sense,
The perfect elevation is Shooter pinning Okada while he does the Rainmaker pose again, according to Brad. That would be pretty nice. I love the idea of Shooter getting a win on Okada just to have Okada blow his gasket. Like, that would be the last straw. And then we have Rampage Okada, which is actually a lot more fun than we even imagined. But he's torn on this one, and I love it. Yeah, me too. It's really interesting. There's just so many ways it could go, and each one of them has its own benefits and its own
pathway of rewards. And
it has its own rewards. Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you for saving me there. I got stuck. But after that one, the never open weight title, we have David Finlay and El Phantasmo. We haven't seen much of Finlay in a little while off of the Best of the Super Juniors tour, and of course El Phantasmo going for his revenge on Finlay. This is another one that I think you could make a case for going either direction on. And I'm looking forward to it. The vicious cheating Finlay has been gaining momentum, I think, and Phantasmo might be a really good foil for him. The wrestling's going to be good.
I think this is his first title defense for the never open weight title, and being leader of Bullet Club. It would be somewhat interesting if he were to lose the title in some type of storytelling back and forth. but I'm kind of leaning towards them continuing to solidify Finlay and ELP coming back around December or January to really maybe take another crack at Finlay after Finlay diabolically gets through the match this time.
And we think El Phantasmo's in G1 this year, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think both of these guys will end up in G1 there. So we will have the three-way match.
Speaking of, this is where the G1 announcements will be.
Yeah, we'll find out what the lineup is at this stage. Of course, we're going backwards, so it'll be before
exactly
this
point.
Yeah. So now we have Bishamon versus House of Torture versus Heron Hinare and Great Okan. The winner of this match will become the new IWGP and NJPW Strong Tag Team Champions. And we said last time that there is a way to set up this three-way. There's a way to set up a babyface victory down the road. And we said last time that we felt like House of Torture might win this. And the more I think about it too, I do feel better about that. Bishamon doesn't really need it. Hinare and Okan don't have to have it, although them winning this thing and then waiting for Aussie Open to come back does have an intrigue to me. But this does, with all these big shows coming up down the line, Jeremy, it seems like a way to put this on some heels so that we can get a triumphant title victory down the road. But Bishamon are a tag team safety blanket for New Japan. You can't count them out. And then you do have that interfaction twist with Hinare and Okan. So it's another thing where the booking is so good with Gedo that you could make a case for any of these three teams.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to do a rematch from Wrestle Kingdom on the second biggest show, just straight up between FTR and Bishamon. Even though that match wasn't as good as we would hope for it to be, it would seem kind of a mistake to de-escalate Bishamon from losing or winning. It just doesn't make any sense to do the Bishamon rematch. I think the Aussie Open tease is there to make you want Aussie Open to win this match.
Aussie Open or Okan and Hinare?
I meant United Empire, Okan, because of the Aussie Open connection and wanting to wrestle them at some point. So I'm going to go with you. I think it's going to be House of Torture. I think we're going to get some type of mid-Atlantic wrestling match, New Japan style at Forbidden Door against FTR, much like the Jarrett match against FTR. Evil and Yujiro doing that kind of thing.
Hey, when you have a guy whose prime was in the 1980s, you wrestle a 1980s tag team match. That's what you do.
Yeah, I have a feeling that House of Torture versus FTR is probably the most likely of those matches going into Forbidden Door. So I'm going to pick House of Torture.
Boy, I tell you what, FTR has had some tough assignments over the years, but getting a good match out of Yujiro Takahashi, you're asking an awful lot.
Like I was predicting earlier, if we can get that all-in match at Wembley, and this is a route to get there, House of Torture versus dropping those titles, and then it just clears the way for that big Aussie Open moment at Wembley. I think that's something that you need to lean into as much as possible.
I want to get some comments in here. Colin says, I hope Phantasmo destroys Jay White Light. So he's not quite buying in on Finlay quite yet. We'll see how that goes. And Brad says, anyone but House of Torture. Colin, go back to that one. United Empire for the win. House of Torture must be destroyed.
Check out that heat, Steven. They got heat.
That's right. Yeah, imagine that. Real heel heat in this business. It doesn't happen very often.
Spicy.
They're so busy. Everyone's so busy trying to be the cool heel. No one wants to get booed. Let's see. We have a TV championship match. We have a rematch. Now, of course, they did what we thought was a good idea. They did a 15-minute draw and established the idea that these title matches can indeed go the time limit. And who better than these two to show us that? Zack Sabre Jr., Jeff Cobb, rematch for this one. The idea of Jeff Cobb being the one to beat Zack Sabre doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And I feel like his style works better for the 15-minute time limit. I feel like Zach's going to be around a little bit more. I think this might be where Zach finally gets the win on Cobb after going to the draw the first time. That's just my hunch. Jeff Cobb would be a perfectly fine television champion, but it doesn't fit that style so much to me. The style of the very technical, fast-paced 15-minute match. Cobb is a terrific wrestler. I feel like this is more of a role for Zach.
I need to see about 10 to 12, 13 more minutes of this match happily. And I think in order for that to happen, I think Zack Sabre needs to win. Jeff Cobb has bigger plans down the line. I am glad he gets a featured singles match at the second biggest show of the year. This is a win for everybody. We're all going to have a great time with it. When it's all done, I think it's Zack Sabre Jr.
All right, moving on from that, IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles, Kevin Knight and Kushida against Catch 22, TJP, Francesco Akira. So this one, they worked pretty hard in the Best of Super Juniors to make Kushida and Kevin Knight look vulnerable, very vulnerable. And they played up the idea that Kushida had a bad tournament results-wise and that Knight in his first tournament ran into a few obstacles there. And it just seems a little bit too obvious to me. I'm suspicious here. I feel a retention coming on just because they've worked so hard to say that Kushida and Kevin Knight aren't strong champions. So, on the other hand, if they put the belts back on Catch 22, I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with either team winning the match. My tea leaves are saying that we might get a retention here just to show that Kushida and Knight aren't schmucks.
I like the story that there are flaws in the game because Kushida is a little bit older and Kevin Knight is a little bit younger, and neither of them are in the zone of their prime. But when they're together, they're better than anybody else. I like that story, and I hope that they continue with that story because the Jet Setters are a really fun team. And Catch 22 had a really great run, but I think this is more to solidify the Jet Setters by getting a win, a concreted win over Catch 22, because there's a bright future for Akira as well. And TJP has had a really great Best of the Super Juniors, but their elevation is probably to continue to elevate the junior tag champions instead of elevating themselves.
And how strong is this card? Here is the opening match of the night. It is the we have
this one first.
I'm with you. I'm there. I'm on there. I guess we have Naito, Shingo Takagi, Bushi, and Titan against Taichi, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, Taichi, and Taka Michinoku. No. Is it Taka? It is, isn't it? Taichi, Taka, and Doki. So I guess we know who's losing this one. But LIJ and Just Five Guys, I'm not going to sugarcoat this too much. Kind of done with the LIJ versus Just Five Guys.
I was done about 3 weeks ago. I thought after like that match between SANADA and Hiromu, we were going to wrap this up, and then
we're still wrestling each other here, aren't we?
Still going, huh?
Yeah, still going. I mean, there's
Just
every
Five Guys.
sign of
5 months of this feud.
I mean, either Bushi or Taka are dropping the fall like always. I just don't see a whole lot coming out of this one. I suppose that Taichi, Naito, Shingo are all going to be part of G1, and they can move on to other things after that. But this will be a match on the card.
Yeah, just spotlighting people to look good before they're announced for the G1, probably. Yeah.
And then the next one, here we go. Here's the opener. The finals for the IWGP US title contenders tournament. So, of course,
you got Lance on this one, right?
Sure, yeah. That's who's going to Wembley to Forbidden Door to face Kenny Omega. It's going to be Lance Archer and Kenny Omega. What could be a bigger match than that? Oh, wait, I got one. It's going to be the winner of this one, Will Ospreay, coming back. Hopefully his shoulder is in good shape. If not, he's with a pro that can handle it and probably take care of him. Lance is a much smarter worker than people give him credit for.
So this is the finals of the number one contender to the IWGP US.
Winner gets a shot at Kenny Omega's IWGP US title.
The longest tournament in the world. 5 entrants. There shall only be one when all is said and done.
Yeah, this should be Will, obviously, to set up that Omega rematch that we've all been dying for here. So.
Oh, funny story before we finish this off. I ran into Juice Robinson at the airport.
Did you really?
I did.
That's cool. How was he? Did you talk to him?
I was at the security line going through the checkpoint right before the dog. He and Tony got moved into the line because they were in a different security thing. They were right in front of me. I debated it for a second, and then I turned around and said, "Excuse me, I'm only going to tell you this, and I'm going to leave you alone. I thought you two were tremendous in your resurgence match in New Japan last week, and I hope you have a great day." And they said, "Thank you." And then we laughed over a dog at the security line, and that was that.
Oh, what a heartwarming story. That's a nice little thing. You met the Robinsons.
Good
you met
people.
The Robinsons. Yeah, Yeah. He's a good dude. So let's get a couple of comments in as we get close to running out of time here. There it is. Okay. Colin mentions he was referring to the TV title match here. I'm looking forward to this. Their last match was awesome. Yep. Agreed. We're two really talented guys. They're going to have a nice little tight 15-minute match here. And and Brad mentions, I know during the last match, Chris Charlton was playing up how Cobb was winning matches in under 10 minutes. I wonder if that was foreshadowing, but I want Zack Sabre Jr. to retain. Interesting point. There you go. Maybe they have been.
I wonder if read the next call from Colin Mathy. Sorry.
Colin, Lance gets screwed all the time, but you're right. Ospreay's winning. Yeah. Lance, boy, for a guy that's pretty darn good, and he's got size, he has charisma, he can wrestle. And no one seems to want the dude for anything. Like he goes to AEW, they forget him. And they just don't use him very much. They stuck him with Jake Roberts, who had no idea how to get someone else over other than, there's a difference between being a good talker and a good manager. Mm-hmm. And Jake was not. Jake was great at getting himself over. And I don't mean that Jake is some sort of selfish bastard, although, well, but
I wonder
Jake wasn't good at getting Lance over, and then he just kind of faded away. And, he was in WWE, and I said this at the time very quickly here. Size, working ability, anything. Show me one thing that Baron Corbin does better than Lance Archer. And yet they picked Corbin. And AEW there are guys that are so much better. He's so much better than some of the guys that they have wandering around out there on Dynamite, and they don't use them. And I don't get it. I like Lance, but and he's a Texas guy, so maybe I'm biased.
I honestly wondered, and he agreed to do the whole tournament and get booked to it, that he knew that he was going to be losing in the opening match at Dominion.
Well,
yeah, great. We did not get to the preview of All Together now. We will get to that next week. A number of matches were added. There's only one I think that they should add that they have not added yet, but we will have the full preview next week. And that is the good-looking guys from Noah versus just 5 guys from New Japan. That
still are beating hearts.
That should be the match that they book next if they do it at all.
It's too sexy for one show, that one right there. So also, by the way, on the pre-show, there will be a Young Lion Gauntlet. I don't think we're going to be seeing that on the broadcast, though, at Dominion, but it'll give them a little bit of ring time in front of a big crowd. I'm sure it's going to be a huge crowd at Osaka Joe Hall. Looks like it's going to be a strong one and a good card. So there you go.
Well,
Jeremy, you ready to wrap this one up?
Yeah, you can find me at Jer Finestone on Twitter. You can email Gigi at Fight Game Media for a Discord invite to talk New Japan with me and other people. And Steven Conway, what do you got?
At Steven Conway 88 for my Twitter. And of course, next week here on the show, we will have a complete breakdown match by match of what should be a fantastic Dominion card. We will look ahead to All Together again, and we should have some more information about what's going on a little bit down the road, perhaps with some Forbidden Door info and any other news that comes up.
G1 results.
Yeah, we'll have a G1 lineup to examine, so plenty to do as always. So with that in mind, for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate the support we've gotten from this wonderful audience we have. We look forward to talking to you again next week. We'll see you then. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. Speaking of Strong Style.